Hey, what's going on? I'm DJ Sixsmith. You're watching The Sit Down. You're going to like this next docu-series we're talking about. It's a wild story. James Lee Hernandez, Brian Lazarte, McMillions, guys. What's going on? How are you?
Thanks for having us.
Good to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you too.
So I told you before, I'm an hour in, and just reliving this whole story was wild. Why was this a story to tell for you guys, and what was it like putting it together?
We, like most kids growing up in the 90s, the McDonald's Monopoly game was huge.
Mm-hmm.
It was everything. Like I remember every single summer I was like looking forward to trying to win that $1 million, and usually you just get like free burgers and fries and all that. So when we first discovered that this was happening behind the curtain the entire time, it was like, gotta dive in, need to know everything about it, and surprisingly there wasn't that much information about it. And so, I discovered the story in 2012, eventually put a Freedom of Information request in with the U.S. government. That took a little over 3 years to go through. Wow. And once that went through, I was able to contact FBI agents and the FBI itself and talk to them about it. And they're like, this is our favorite case. No one has ever contacted us about it. Yeah, and so then I called up Brian, and here we are.
Yeah, they were really hyped to talk about it, and especially like Jacksonville, the FBI isn't exactly a hopping spot down there. So what was it like engaging with the FBI on all this?
I mean, you would think that, right? That they'd be more subdued.
Yeah, a little more secretive about everything.
There's this stoic, hard to read.
Right.
But the Jacksonville FBI is apparently where it's at. Like, these characters are full of life, full of creativity. Obviously, one of our the rookie agent, who's very much featured in the first episode, is highly entertaining.
He's definitely told the story like 10 different times to people in his life.
And this is his chance to really tell it the way. I mean, and Doug Matthews, the main FBI agent, or the rookie FBI agent that worked this case and really was the heart and soul of a lot of it. He is he's a character.
He's quite a character.
Yeah. He's so atypical of what you would think of the very boring FBI agent, and it's still, when we talk to him on the phone today, he's like that 100% of the time.
It's really fascinating. What about the people from McDonald's too? Because they're on the other side of it, and they eventually didn't have any involvement with it. But what was it like, kind of unpacking that situation?
I mean, you'll see too in the upcoming episodes. We talked to a number of the winners as well. With everybody, it just like it blow our minds. Yeah. There'd be a new chapter of the story that we had no idea was there. I mean, with the FBI, getting to learn about it from their point of view, like seeing their investigative process, realizing like, okay, this started with like the kernel of like a Post-it note, something that would have almost been discarded as a hoax or not worth pursuing from a financial standpoint within the Bureau. And then to see it expand, within that, and how they got McDonald's to help them achieve what they needed to do, which was to run the game again, to catch who was behind this. We approached it very similarly. Like, McDonald's at first, wasn't necessarily 100% on board with participating in the docu-series.
Yeah, when we first reached out to them, they were a bit trepidatious,
to
say the least.
Yeah.
I mean, they're one of the biggest companies on the planet. They're extremely protective of their brand, and most documentaries that are done about McDonald's don't usually sway it in the best light. And we said, look, we're going to tell this story. We want to come to Chicago and just tell you what we're thinking. And that's it. It's about relationship building, and you can say yes, you can say no, but let's just talk about it, and it starts from there.
Yeah, I think it was important you had them in there too, because they're a part of the story. They're part of this 100%. Undercover production company that's going and talking to the winners. Like, that was insane.
Right. And actually, it said a lot to us about the company McDonald's, not only for what they did back then, but also for us. So we were tremendously grateful that they were willing to share their side of the story.
Definitely. And you had the footage of the actual winner. Like that's where this all began. So it was just something so simple, but like kind of eerie to look back on in a sense. So what was it like using that footage and telling the story now?
Well, we have the reaction like anybody else. When you watch that footage, it's mind-blowing. You're like, I'm watching someone lie to the FBI. They know what's going on.
Right. And the FBI is lying to them.
Yeah, exactly, because Doug's in there and he's pretending to be a cameraman. Yeah, so both sides are lying, and then we don't know what the rest of the story is going to be, but we see everything unfolding.
Exactly, and then the winners, they go into very intricate detail, which just sort of emboldens the lie that they're telling. Like the more detail you throw into something like that, the more it doesn't seem quite right. And you have this entire team of FBI agents who are acting as this undercover crew, and they have no clue what they're doing. And outside of the cameraman, everybody else is fumbling around and trying to figure out how to do things. It's just still such a crazy thing to watch even now.
Yeah, Brian, what stuck out to you the most about that part of the docu-series?
Well, I mean, obviously, like it plays very much like a movie, right? The FBI concocting this idea to show up.
Shamrock Productions.
Productions, like, hey, let's start a production company and show up at these winners' houses. To have them tell their story on camera, like Publishers Clearinghouse, with the big check.
This is how directors dress in polos. They're like, where are you getting this information? You guys are probably like, this is ridiculous.
It was hilarious. Like that was the advice he got. Like a director looks like they just came off the golf course.
It's like not exactly.
Maybe back in the 90s.
I don't know where they're talking, but you guys know that's not how directors roll.
But watching that footage though, it's like we always found that you have these conflicting feelings, because on one hand, this person's lying. You almost want to laugh, but at the same time, you also feel bad for them at the same time. So it's that conflict of how to feel about these people sharing their story, we found to be an incredibly compelling component of this story.
Yeah, what about Uncle Jerry, just as a character himself? Like, what fascinates you guys the most about just the whole con in general?
Yeah, it's one thing that the FBI has talked to us quite a bit about is the idea that it's so difficult to keep any crime quiet that have more than one person in it. And the fact that there are a ton of people involved in this, it happened over 12 years, and eventually they got busted and somebody talked, but that it went that long without being talked about is fascinating. But for the Uncle Jerry portion and how the scam actually worked, it's crazy to think of. When you see the entire series, you'll realize what it's almost like a very lo-fi scam. Like nowadays, we're used to hearing of these crazy like internet schemes.
Right, technology's involved,
And this was just somebody in the right place at the right time that saw a loophole and exposed that loophole and then did it for a decade.
Crazy. What stuck out to you about just the whole fraud in general, Brian?
Oh, well, I mean, about the whole fraud in general. I mean, there's a great deal of mystery here, right? The fact that, like, as James said, like for over a decade, this happened, in front of the American public, right? If you grew up in that time, like, 90s McDonald's is pure nostalgia.
Oh yeah, you're looking to peel that French fries, use the fish fillet, the whole thing. Yeah,
and McDonald's was huge. McDonald's is really a part to expose
no doubt.
And to see this, this story, like be exposed in the way we wanted to expose it or share the intricate details, you realize that there's a great deal of mystery in it. Not only in terms of like what was withheld from each of these participants, right, who were roped into it, or some people knowingly participated, but also from the FBI. The FBI was just trying to figure out the entire time, like, A, who is this Uncle Jerry? And B, how's he doing it? Like, how do you actually steal these game pieces? Because what you'll find out in episode 2, like, when they go and look at the chain of how this game piece is produced and then ends up on the actual fry box or the Big Mac box, like that production line and that plan is like foolproof.
Yeah.
Like, it's impenetrable. The security detail that was put in place was incredible. And, of course, as any law enforcement or FBI agent, they're like trying to solve this.
Right.
Like, how is this game piece?
It's
like,
crazy.
At a time before Google.
Right.
Yeah.
They couldn't just be like, okay, let's do all this internet research. They're literally having to figure this out and investigate it. And that was a big portion of them working with McDonald's.
Right.
How does the game work? What are the ins and outs and nooks and crannies of this entire thing?
Yeah, and it's really representative of the time. So it's pre-internet, and like in today's day and age, like there's no way it would have lasted 12 years. Like the fact that happened is insane, right?
Right. Oh, absolutely.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And then the other part of it too is like what people are willing to do to get more money, like the greed factor and all this. Like people are willing to bend the rules. So what was it like for you guys just to look at the human side of it and be like, people are willing to potentially ruin their lives just for this cash in the here and now?
Yeah, the human side was the major thing for us. Is on the surface, it is a very fascinating story. All you have to do is say McDonald's monopoly fraud,
and you're in.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah.
But when you dive deeper and look inside of this and the people that were involved in it, it's insane to see like some of the people that are in the Shamrock Productions interviews. You look at them and it's very easy to think, oh, there's the criminal, but you don't understand the circumstances behind it. Some people are just greedy. Uncle Jerry, some of the people at the top, there's a lot of greed involved, and almost 100%.
Yeah.
But there are certain people that got roped into this thing because they may have been down on their luck, or a struggling single mother, or just in general, they thought that this was their chance, this was their miracle. And a lot of times, then you'll start to gauge your normal moral compass in a way where you want to believe this is true so badly, you're willing to overlook that it's not exactly right.
Yeah, there's a desperation factor involved in all this, and it's just a chance at a better life, too. And this is such a simple game, but it provided so much more for these people.
Well, you know, a lot of people, when we first tell them about the story, they're like, well, it's a victimless crime. You know, you're stealing from a multi-billion-dollar corporation.
Yeah.
You're not hurting anybody. And
somebody has to win.
Somebody
anyway.
has to win.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, if you're winning the wrong way, that's where the issue comes
Yeah, I mean,
up.
everybody wanted to win. Back then, it's like if
it was the biggest thing,
Yeah, a friend, family member came to you and said, hey, I have an ironclad way for you to win $1 million.
Right.
All you have to do is say, you're the one who actually peeled this game piece, right? Like,
What are you going to say, no? I mean, it's like,
Most people, if you had somebody that close to you come to you and say that, and you're like, you don't have to kill anybody, you don't have to rob a bank.
And you just want a cut of the pie?
Exactly.
Great.
Yeah,
Exactly.
okay.
And I can afford my house payments now, or I can do something for my kids.
Right.
Like,
But the consequences, right, of that choice to actually go ahead and lie, even though it might seem like harmless, victimless, was actually quite significant.
Yeah.
And that's really one of the great lessons or takeaways that we do hope people have after watching the entire series, is that the consequences of these actions were great, and they affected not only those who were involved, but many, many other people, even to this day. And it's actually quite surprising.
Yeah, so what are still some of the bigger consequences? I mean, people went to prison for this. I mean, McDonald's had to put the pieces back together. What are the biggest takeaways in that department?
The biggest thing is there were a large number of people that ended up being convicted and being a federal criminal on this. And becoming a federal criminal, that's on your record forever.
That's a life changer.
Yeah, it completely changes being a citizen in America. You can't vote. There are a lot of other things within it that it'll hinder you trying to get jobs. And there are so many people that were involved in this. Like, from the FBI standpoint, this is their job. They did this case. It was very interesting. And then they go on to the next case. That's it. For the criminal side of it, this is something that's haunted these people since this time. And it's been really interesting to us to watch really the resiliency of the human spirit of a lot of people within this case that were found as federal criminals. They didn't let it hold them back, and they bounced back and they fought, and they've gotten to a good place where they are today.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But I mean, still, like, friends, family members, relationships just destroyed.
Shattered,
Jobs. I mean, you name it. There's, and, you know, we reveal quite a bit of this throughout the entire series. So, again, it was we anticipated some of it. I don't think we anticipated just the scale,
the breadth
in which,
of it.
it affected a lot of these people.
Well, thinking of how big the game was, and think about the logistics that go into that, the printing company, the people that make the cups, the workers there. Once this whole thing goes down, companies go out of business, workers get laid off, and that's thousands of lives that you're affecting just from one person's greed.
Right, McDonald's is going to say, like, we're out, we don't want to do this anymore, but you're not thinking about everybody else involved, the thousands of other people who are getting work just from this one game.
Yeah, and even McDonald's itself, they ran this game knowing it was fraudulent, and they knew that they were a target.
For the purpose of catching
Correct.
who was behind it. I mean, that was a huge risk.
That's a major risk,
Major risk,
Yeah, because if you don't catch that person, you keep going on years and years and years, your moral compass, it starts to change a little bit, saying, what are we doing here?
Yeah, it was really, this was the FBI's one shot to get this. They're like, we're going to run this game one more time. You guys got to figure it out. And that's it. It's not like Doug Matthews, the FBI agent, says, like, we knew we had this one shot. It's not like, oh, sorry, we didn't catch him. Let's run this game again next year. Like
Right.
That,
No, this is the one chance.
Yep.
And imagine if you didn't look at that Post-it note and get involved with this. You know, they could have just got away with this and nobody would ever know.
Yeah.
Or McDonald's, they were in a position that the American public didn't know.
Right.
Right. So they could have just said, hey, like, we'll just pull the campaign.
Right.
Hush,
hush.
Like,
Nobody ever
no
says
one will
anything
ever
about it.
know
That's
that
the
this.
usual corporate
Yeah,
thing is let's
yeah.
just sweep
Sweep
this
it
under
under
the
the rug,
rug,
yeah.
let's throw some money on it, and it's gone.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why this really hits on so many different levels, and I'm sure you guys were fascinated through every part of it.
Oh,
Yeah.
the story unfolds really how we learned it. It was so crazy for us to see these pieces come together, and we really designed the storytelling aspect of the show because the way it is, because it was really interesting to us how the FBI actually works. You see it in movies and TVs and TV shows, and to actually see these people work together to take this small piece of information and expand it out was great. But also, we just wanted to have people experience it the way we did. We were just constantly being shocked every time we interviewed someone.
How many hours of footage did you guys end up having?
We literally set the record at HBO for the amount of footage that we turned in.
We did.
So boiling that down to what, 6 hours, right? That must have
Yeah.
been pretty wild for you guys.
Yeah. I mean, that's like we found ourselves struggling to fit it in.
To condense it, and that's a big amount of time, but still, given the how
It
big
is
this whole
true.
thing
Yeah, I mean,
is.
there's a lot of documentary series out there that are 4 parts and 3 parts too long.
Right.
So we always knew that we didn't want the story to just be spread out or milked. We wanted to really have it be a comprehensive, yet also entertaining. And as you probably have seen in episode 1, it continues to be this way throughout the series. Like, some of our characters are really funny.
Yeah.
They bring a great deal of levity and humor to this particular situation, which was also a surprise to us. But we wanted this to be comprehensive fun. The things that we couldn't actually fit into the body of the show that kept making it to the cutting room floor. Like, not too long ago, we talked to HBO about doing a companion podcast to the piece, and that was something that they got behind. And so now with every episode, we'll do a follow-up podcast to share some of our deleted scenes, to talk to people who are a part of the series in more detail, answer questions, because there's so much more to the story.
Endless material.
Beyond what's even within the 6 hours.
Yeah, there's so much.
Yeah.
It was tough because there were very interesting stories that sometimes they can bog down the episode, but they're still really cool to us. So we wanted to be able to talk about them.
Well, looking forward to it all, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you very much
so
for coming
Thanks
in.
for having us.
Thank you.
One of the most fascinating docu-series you'll see out there. For the guys, I'm DJ. See you next time. You're on The Sit Down.